In global politics, power isn't measured only in missiles or speeches. Sometimes it's measured in barrels. And when those barrels belong to Russia and the United States decides to tighten the tap, you know the world's about to get noisy. This week, Washington rolled out its latest sanctions package, a direct hit on two of Russia's biggest oil giants, Rosneft and Lukoil. The goal? To choke Moscow's energy revenue and push President Vladimir Putin into an economic corner. But if Washington expected panic, what it got instead was poise. Putin, calm and composed, told the world, "We will not bow to foreign pressure. Dialogue is better than confrontation, but we will not bend." That's right, no shaking, no sweating, just that signature Russian cool. Some call it confidence, others call it stubbornness. Either way, it's classic Kremlin theater. Today, we break down the 5 critical layers of this standoff: the sanctions, the strategy, the global market tremors, the war economy, and the art of surviving under pressure. Because this isn't just about oil, it's about power, pride, and a game of global chess played with pipelines and politics. So let's dive in. 5 facts that define Russia's fiery response to America's oil war. When the U.S. Treasury announced sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil, it wasn't just another diplomatic slap. It was a calculated attempt to hit the heart of Russia's economy. Oil is Moscow's bloodstream. It fuels government budgets, military spending, and the country's international leverage. By targeting 2 of the biggest energy giants, Rosneft, responsible for over 40% of Russia's crude oil exports, and Lukoil, the country's second-largest producer, Washington hoped to make Moscow bleed financially. But Russia's economy, unlike a fragile stock exchange, is structured for endurance. Since 2014, after the first round of sanctions over Crimea, Russia built what economists call a sanction shield. Reserve funds exceeding $600 billion, domestic oil technology, and alternative trade routes to Asia. Still, the move was bold. The U.S. wanted to restrict transactions with these companies globally, blocking American financing, insurance, and technology partnerships. In simple terms, don't touch Russian oil or you'll pay the price. But here's where it gets interesting. Russia has seen this movie before. Sanctions are no longer surprises. They're sequels, and Moscow knows how to rewrite the ending. If Washington expected a dramatic collapse, they clearly underestimated how much Russia has learned to breathe underwater. President Putin's response? A masterclass in political theater. Standing before cameras, he called the sanctions an unfriendly act, one that does not help relations that were just beginning to recover. He accused the U.S. of playing politics with global energy stability, warning that such pressure could boomerang and raise oil prices worldwide. It was the tone of a man who's been here before. Calm, deliberate, slightly amused, the hallmark of Russian defiance. Putin's strategy has always been to project strength even when cornered. He knows that in geopolitics, perception is half the battle. If the world sees Russia trembling, the mission is lost. But if it sees resolve, that's deterrence. In Moscow, the messaging was clear. We have faced worse and survived. In the West, analysts called it arrogance. In Russia, it played as patriotism, a leader shielding his nation from foreign interference. And there's another angle. Putin reminded Washington that the world doesn't run on American oil alone. He said, "Those who think they can control energy markets from Washington forget that demand speaks louder than decrees." So while the Kremlin energy is Russia's lifeblood and its arsenal, every barrel sold funds both public welfare and military logistics. The sanctions, then, are not just economic, they're strategic strikes at Russia's war chest. The idea is simple: starve the machine, slow the war. Washington hopes that draining oil profits will reduce Russia's ability to sustain long-term operations in Ukraine. But as history shows, this strategy rarely works quickly. Russia has spent years re-engineering its economy to withstand such blows. According to data from Moscow's finance ministry, even under reduced exports, oil and gas revenues in 2025 are projected to remain stable due to higher global prices, ironically inflated by the sanctions themselves. Putin himself hinted at this irony, saying, "You sanction us and you raise the price of what we sell. That is not punishment, that is profit." Meanwhile, the Russian ruble, though under stress, has stabilized through capital controls. Domestic production continues, with smaller state-backed companies filling gaps left by sanctioned partners. And while Western analysts warn of a slow economic squeeze, Kremlin strategists call it controlled resistance. In other words, the sanctions sting, but they don't strangle. Still, in the global economy, every move has a countermove. So what's Russia doing behind the curtain to keep the oil flowing and money moving? Here's where Russia gets crafty. When official trade routes close, the back channels open. Enter the shadow fleet, a network of hundreds of old oil tankers operating under obscure ownerships, reflagged through smaller nations, and used to move Russian oil discreetly across seas. Financially, Moscow now leans on alternative systems like China's UnionPay, India's rupee mechanisms, and the MIR payment network. Transactions flow through middlemen in the UAE, Turkey, and even parts of Africa. It's sanctions dodgeball at a global scale. This gray economy has one goal: keep the money moving. And it works. Russia's exports may have dipped, but not disappeared. For every door Washington closes, Moscow finds a window. Western officials call it evasion. Russian officials call it adaptation. "We don't break rules, we build new ones," a Kremlin spokesman quipped. But beyond the intrigue lies the real consequence: the fragmentation of global trade. Each new sanction pushes Russia, China, and the global South closer together, building an alternative system less dependent on Western control. So where does this leave us? Between pride, profit, and politics, a world adjusting to new fault lines in energy and power. And there you have it, the full picture: sanctions, defiance, economics, and the shadowy moves that keep this global game alive. The United States wants compliance. Russia demands respect. The result? A tug of war that reshapes not only oil markets, but world order itself. As Putin stands tall against pressure, one truth remains: in geopolitics, nobody blinks forever. Now the real test begins. Who can endure longer, who can adapt faster, and who can turn pressure into profit? If you found this story insightful, hit that like button, subscribe to Global Pulse News, and join our growing community of sharp global thinkers. And hey, we're one family here. Check out our sister channels. For kids' creativity and joy, check out Sparkling Kids. For fun learning and family growth, go to @RaymaFatima. Let's grow together, let's learn together, and as always, let's keep your world pulsing.